Everyone, welcome back to Not Keeping It Real. I'm David Crane, along with Tony Devon.
How's it going, everybody?
How are you doing this week, Tony?
Good. A lot better.
A lot better.
hmm
What was wrong?
Well, I told you I had no power last week, so I had to freaking plug my setup in from the outlet of the bathroom, and then I had to go off my Wi-Fi. So this is a
I
lot better.
either am so self-involved that I don't remember that, or I don't think you told
It's
me all
fine.
the
It's
details.
fine.
And luckily, yeah, you don't live in Texas, so that's good. You live in California like me, so we're okay. Anyway, folks, we'll be talking about WandaVision today. Well, a little bit about WandaVision, new episode, and also Elimination Chamber. Both took place over the past couple of days. Elimination Chamber last night, and WandaVision aired on Friday. Let's talk about that first. Tony, so you saw it, and you're like a little bit more like skeptical to the overall show than I am.
Okay, correct
So
me if I'm wrong. You said this episode was going to be an hour, right?
I heard it was going to be an hour. In fact, it was not only it's something I feel like I should have looked up to because there were many news reports, like legitimate news reports, that were like the last 3 episodes will be an hour each, and this one was not an hour. So it was
like one of the last episodes. That could be one of the reasons why maybe you got that wrong. It could have just been, well, just because they did the big reveal doesn't mean, oh, well, this is close to the end.
No. There's
Go.
9 episodes. There's 9 episodes.
Oh.
There's 9 episodes. This is number 7. 2 more left. That is for certain.
Oh.
Then we go into Winter Soldier and Falcon and all that stuff. So yeah, there's 2 more episodes left. Sorry, 2. And yeah, so I hope that the other ones are an hour, but I don't know. Anyway, go forget about the length of the time. How long?
Since 2 seems the magical number, I have 2 big notes.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
a little disappointed that we got the big reveal and it was Agatha. It's like, well, it's the only other person on the show, and it's like, okay, that kind of makes sense, but at the same time, you're kind of hoping it was a bigger reveal that would lead to bigger and better things down the MCU road. And it's like, okay, that's fine, a little predictable, but okay, I'll roll with it. It makes sense. And the second plus was Kat Dennings in a tight outfit. That was very much wins, very much buys.
Sorry? Kat Dennings?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, yeah. Hey,
no. You can't say that.
I didn't say anything with those glasses. I mean, what can I say? Yeah, I get it. I was thinking that actually. Yeah, I actually find Agnes kind of hot. So she has a real name, Catherine Hahn. So I took the note. When I'm watching this show, I don't always like right away pick up like, oh, that's the so and so. That's Paul Bettany as Vision. That's
That's why you're the host. I'm just here for the ride.
Are you? Oh,
so right. I can just yeah, whatever her name is. No, that's her real name.
That's an awful lot of responsibility. Yes. So what did you feel about the reveal? You were like, is that it?
It was one of those things where it's like, okay, well, it makes sense, and you kind of saw it coming. But it's like, okay, I was kind of hoping for maybe something that like, we're going to do Mephisto, and he's going to wind up being a villain somewhere down the road in the MCU. Or I think you speculated Magneto, or like, okay, that's something they could do something down the road. But it's like, okay, Agatha, so this is kind of feels like it's a one and done. They're going to deal with Agatha probably here. She'll probably do something in the background maybe later in the MCU. But it's like, okay, this is probably just supposed to be a self-contained series. She's really the only person, maybe aside from the sword people outside that are really on the show, that it could have been. So it's fine. I'm a little disappointed, but it makes 100% sense.
Okay, cool. So I had to do some research on Agatha, and I will read it off. It's directly from Wikipedia. Agatha Harkness appeared first in Fantastic Four number 94, 1970. Now, if you pull up a visual of the character, she's like an old hag, basically.
That's predominantly what she's been. I mean, I've read a couple stories with her in it, and she's always been complimentary to Wanda, not really an antagonist. So that's why I was like, oh, it can't be her. But if this is the MCU we're talking about, they can do whatever they want with whoever they want. and
Right.
they're gonna wind up making her a villain. Okay, it's fine. It's different. It's their own take. It makes sense. Okay.
So yeah, exactly, and yeah, and just as you mentioned, I never heard of the character before. Although I'm a big like Marvel Silver Age guy, I guess I haven't. I say that, but I'm mostly focused on Spidey and X-Men. You know, so.
That's right.
And you're actually more of a comic book guy than I am. Technically, for somebody who actually reads comics, especially modern comics.
Yeah.
And which we'll have like totally another pod about more about comics for sure. Like actual comics that you read with your eyes.
I won't hold my breath.
It will happen. Anyway, she's never. I did some research. She's never been portrayed as a villain.
Yeah, see, that's
so
what I'm saying. Okay, that's why I immediately didn't suspect her, because I'm like, oh, I'm familiar with the character. That's going to wind up being a big reveal, because up until then, she had just been portrayed as just someone else who got caught up with Wanda's thing. I'm like, okay, but I bet the reveal somewhere down the road is going to be that she's this, this magical person that's going to wind up helping Wanda. I didn't exactly 100% expect this twist, but it's one of those things where it does make sense, and if you're going within the limited cast, it makes sense for her to be the villain behind all this.
Now, in your honest opinion, would you classify her as a like C-list character, or is she a little bit bigger? I didn't know about her, and I know a little bit about Marvel. So, would you classify B-list, D-list, A-list?
I'd say
not
A-list. Between C and D-list. I mean, we're talking about a Wanda support character. So it's like, okay, right. She's a name that if you read comics, you would know of her. But the other than that, you couldn't really tell people that much about her.
So I think this is part of, like, again, I'm always going to spin this positive with Marvel, like almost always, but I think this is like a bit of like what shows you why Marvel works so well is that you have this show, WandaVision, and it's been working out pretty well so far. It's a big hit online. The mystery was like a big thing and all that. I think it's what everybody's kind of talking about right now. So I think it can definitely be labeled as a hit. It's a hit show with, like, if this is all that happens, like if these are all the characters, I mean, 7 episodes in, like, which I guess would make more logical than anything at this point, then basically you have a C-list character as the main villain, and they made it work. Like, you can't point to anything in DC, really. Maybe some of the TV shows, because I haven't really caught up with the TV shows.
Yeah, if you haven't already, Crane, check out Doom Patrol. That show's amazing.
Okay. I have not, so I do, and I have heard that. Actually, you're not the only person that told me that. But it just basically, not to put DC, we won't even put DC down, but basically, it used to be you had to have like all the A and B characters, like you didn't really dabble in the C and D characters, and now we do in MCU, and they still pull it off, and that's like, and some people are disappointed that it's not Mephisto, which totally could have worked. Magneto, that was never my opinion that it was Magneto, but it was just like, oh, some people think it might be Magneto, and blah blah. I'm very happy with the choice. It's fine, but I think we, after 7 episodes in, we've discovered the Who is manipulating everything. It's not Wanda, which was also one of my theories. It's Agnes, but why? Why is she doing this? Especially if she's a character.
Presumably, Dave, that's what we're gonna get explanation down the road. We're gonna see, we're gonna get the big reveal.
Right.
Why? We know the how,
which could be
but
very
we
big.
don't know why.
Which is could be very potentially big. Mm-hmm. I think there might be someone else pulling the strings. That's.
I mean, you're hoping someone else.
I don't care. I care, of course. Of course I care. But maybe I'm hoping a little. Yeah, that's true. But it doesn't have to be someone else pulling the strings for me to be happy with the show. But I think there might be someone pulling the strings. That's just my theory.
Isn't she supposed to be in a movie down the road? Isn't that she's supposed to be part of the Doctor Strange movie?
Yeah, Wanda is, yeah.
So it could be Baron Mordo come back.
Okay.
I'm thinking in the magical realm. So I'm like, okay,
yeah.
Baron Mordo. They set that up, and then they presumably for a sequel. So this could be a way of transitioning into an eventual sequel.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I almost wondered. I think he is going to be in the second one too. Like they had mentioned that, so he was casted for it. At some point, we're gonna see him hopefully, because obviously this first one led it right into that. But then all these other things happened, so we weren't so sure. So yeah, I mean, to find out why. If I were writing it, it wouldn't make any sense. I'll just say that right now. I mean, it would make a lot of sense, but it wouldn't make sense in terms of comics.
Yeah.
If I were writing it, Mojo would be behind everything. So he's very camera appealing. He's a big, fat, ugly green guy with like weird technical dreads or whatever. But yeah, I think, you know, because it's shot like a television show, right? I mean, this is like the thing that would borrow itself best to Mojo showing up. But Mojo, first of all, he's pretty C-list himself. And so,
no. Well, I mean, you could argue.
He's higher. So he's higher on the pegging.
He's a low B character.
Yeah, he's a more important character than Agnes. But also, you know, I don't think there's been anything in the past with like the Scarlet Witch and you know, Mojo.
Oh, the powers of technology.
But
there we go. Sorry, I don't know if I'm losing you or not. Let's see. Just keep barreling through. We're getting the gist of what you're saying, Crane.
We're just gonna come right out there. We had some technical difficulties, but I think just to put a cap on everything that I was talking about with WandaVision, Mojo from the Mojo world, an X-Men character or a villain, would make a lot of sense to me if I were writing it. But the relation to the characters of Agnes, Mojo, and Scarlet Witch doesn't really make sense, you know, like in the MCU, grand scheme of things. So, but yeah, if he was pulling the strings of Agnes to, you know, create this television show, you know, which is what he's all about, and that would be like, why not? And Make It Red is it going to be in Falcon Winter Soldier.
Oh.
So, and it also seems, which like works for like the television show, but like also like I don't think they've ever really worked together in the comics that much, you know. Like it's an X-Men character and they're, you know, Avengers, so I don't know. But yeah, like I've really enjoyed the show, and we have the Who is pulling the strings, but why? It's a crossover. So I'm really looking forward to finding out what that is all about. But let's segue right into Elimination Chamber. Yesterday, and yeah, I guess we can go right off the top. Keith Lee was injured. Apparently, they were legitimate injuries, but suffered from Bobby Lashley, and that's all we know about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like Mike Johnson, a PW insider, he's a pretty straight shooter. He's like, they're legitimate injuries, but they won't. He didn't say what they were, and it might be a private thing where we're not really allowed to know as people, you know. People in the world, like, might be a private injury. But he's injured, and that sucked, which is why now we have Matt Riddle as U.S. champion. So I think that's...
There's worse things in life.
What?
There's worse things in life.
Is there? No, I'm kidding. Matt Riddle's good, but he has questionable background a little bit. You know, we don't talk about that. But he's a good wrestler. I like Keith Lee a lot more, though. I don't know. You know, so... And yeah, so that basically John Morrison won like a 4-way match that you could have watched on any episode of SmackDown or Raw, nothing. Won't even go into that. He won a match on the pre-show to get into a U.S. title match with Bobby Lashley and Matt Riddle, and Matt Riddle won by pinning John Morrison. And you know, it was like everything on the show that was not in the chamber was not that great. So there was 2 chamber matches.
Okay, it may be. No, I'm usually all for being a cynical wrestling fan, especially when it comes to WWE. I thought this pay-per-view was just okay. Wasn't bad, wasn't great. It's pretty much, you know, run-of-the-mill WWE pay-per-view. A couple of cool things happened, couple of so-so things happened, a couple of bad things happened. It was just okay. You know, this whole thing with Keith Lee, it's like, oh, that sucks, but we got Matt Riddle as U.S. champ, and I'm a big fan of that.
All right, so yeah, more technical difficulties, but we're just keep on going. It won't look as bad once everything's produced. and out there, and you're watching versus what we're dealing with right now. But it's all good. So yeah, but it was kind of short match. I like that Lashley's not the champ anymore, but it's kind of a short match, and now he's being geared for bigger and better things, I guess, because it seems like, well, anyway, we'll talk about WrestleMania later, but it seems like it's going to be kind of a weak card for WrestleMania this year. But opening match was Elimination Chamber, the best match of the night, which, like, usually that happens, that's not like the best thing, because then everybody else just feels like a bit of a letdown, when the first match is so much better than all the other matches. But when you start off with Daniel Bryan and Cesaro in the ring, and you end basically with Cesaro and Daniel Bryan, the final mix of it, that's an awesome match, and I really liked it. That's really the strength of the show. You said this show was like good, not good.
It was middle of the road. It was like, okay, typical rolling off the assembly line WWE pay-per-view. Some good, some bad, some okay. So,
right. I would agree. I would say it was like a 6 out of 10. It's like, all right. I bet you were very excited and thrilled, and I think most fans, a lot of fans were, probably, that it was only a 2.5 hour show.
That's a big plus.
Yeah.
Although one giant takeaway that we haven't brought up yet were the crash pads on the Elimination Chamber. What the?
I did not notice that. What are you talking about?
So between the ring and then the actual chamber itself, where sometimes outside the ropes of the rings they can wrestle and whatnot.
Yeah.
It's usually normal steel floor. They have little crash pads as well as little crash pads on top of the cells.
Oh, okay. I'm not one of those wrestling fans. I'm like, I was like a wrestling fan raised in the mid to late 90s on wrestling. Mm-hmm. And so I never think about the safety of the wrestlers, It's like, I don't know.
No, I didn't like it, is what I'm saying. It took me out in a lot of instances. It's like, you couldn't have, okay, maybe the hard rating steel isn't the way to go. But, like, maybe just put, like, some wood paneling and paint it black. It's, like, at least that way it looks like, okay, it's still kind of like an extension of the ring. Whereas a crash pad, it's like, I can't take you out of it.
Well, I didn't even notice it, so I guess I'm with some Mark,
No, for you. You were probably the majority.
Yeah. Hopefully it came off that well for most people. But, yeah. So that's good eye, Tony. So Daniel Bryan won the match. And Daniel Bryan is my favorite wrestler, so I have no problem with that. Then he had a match with Roman Reigns, who has been doing a great job as a heel. Didn't really like him as a face, like most fans. But he's been doing a great job as a heel. Roman beats him in a couple minutes. Edge comes out, spears him, and sets up the match for Edge and Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. So, general opinion on all that, Tony.
I thought this was a perfect angle. Obviously, they have... Well, I'm sure now they have some plans for Daniel Bryan versus Roman Reigns. I'm sure this was an angle to set that up because we still have one pay-per-view before Mania. So I imagine we're going to do Daniel Bryan versus Roman Reigns, and then Roman Reigns presumably would win at Fastlane, and then we'd get Edge versus Roman. It made sense. The fact that I did not know they announced the gimmick of this cage was the winner would get Roman Reigns later on in the night. That was new to me. I just presumed either Roman would either be in the match or the winner would get the match at Mania. I should have known that Edge was going to come out as soon as they announced that, the winner will get Roman later on tonight. And as soon as Roman came out, I should have realized, okay, this is probably all to set up for Edge and Roman at Mania. That makes sense now.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's good. I completely forgot about Fastlane. Until they
you
had
would be forgiven.
What?
You would be forgiven for getting about Fastlane.
Yeah.
I didn't know they still did it. At first, it was like a C pay-per-view. It's like, okay, sometimes they do it, sometimes they don't. And
yeah, it's definitely a C pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Me, because it's definitely an afterthought of an afterthought. So, but it's the final stop before WrestleMania. So for all the Raws and SmackDowns in between Fastlane and WrestleMania.
I thought the final stop before Mania pay-per-view wise was going to be Elimination Chamber.
Right.
Okay, that's what they've done before in the past. So I'm like, okay, it's been years since they've done Fastlane, or at least I can remember they've done Fastlane. So
I feel like they did one last year. I just feel like nobody cared.
the only one I remember is the one where they did Triple H. I think it was Triple H versus Dean Ambrose. I was like, oh, that's cool. They're giving Dean Ambrose a main event pay-per-view on a show. So
that was years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the only time I remember Fastlane being relevant.
Yeah. But yeah, I love the match. The whole Elimination Chamber match is the reason to watch this show. You know. And the Roman Reigns thing and angle and all that clocks in about 59 minutes of the first, hour or 2.5 hours of the show. So you basically get 40% of good stuff, and then you kind of things get taken down a bit with a match that could easily have been on television. Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler beating Sasha and Bianca Belair. And then the U.S. title match. But there was a change. So Matt Riddle is a new U.S. champion. I just thought it was a little anticlimactic. And any general thoughts on we talked about the U.S. title match. You want to say anything about the women's title match that meant nothing?
This was fine. This is a serviceable women's tag team title match. I thought they were going to do the typical WWE thing where the two top people are also the tag team champions. So I just assumed they were going to win tonight because that's what they tend to do.
I thought for a moment, I did not think that at all until there was a moment, there was a near fall in there that I was all like, oh, I guess, because it looked like at one point they definitely were going to win the titles.
Yeah. I'm glad they do that now because I hate it when they hotshot the tag team titles just for the sake of the main event angle. I like this. It still works. You still had, Sasha and Bianca's miscommunication lead to them not winning the tag team titles, which helps build for their Mania match for the title.
Right.
Cool. I much prefer that as opposed to sacrificing, the tag team titles, kind of making them not worth that much. So this was overall a good idea.
So who do you think should play the face and heel in that scenario, or both? Just keeping that as they are.
You have the established person. Sasha should presumably be a heel.
Right.
You have the plucky underdog babyface and Bianca. That makes 100% sense.
Yeah.
That's what I would do, because the thing is, okay, you kind of do have that reaction of, well, we know and like Sasha, and we're kind of familiar with Bianca, but we're gonna go with the for sure thing. It's like, no, the typical pro wrestling dynamic is you want the established person being the heel and the plucky underdog being the babyface that everybody likes.
That's just wrestling 101. Yeah, I completely agree. So we'll move on from our very educated but somewhat cliche opinion on that. That's absolutely what they should do. So the world title match, Drew McIntyre defending against all those other guys, all former world champions. Kofi took the Miz's spot for. I don't know what the storyline reason was for that, but they're just like, Miz gonna sit this one out, and he's probably gonna cash in the Money in the Bank. And usually when they say that, they don't cash in the Money in the Bank. Well, Drew won the match. And it was, I think he last eliminated AJ Styles, so it was Drew and AJ Styles, the last two guys in the ring. And then Bobby Lashley came down for, I don't know the storyline reason, but he came down from my viewer's perspective, because I only watch pay-per-views, for no reason, and to beat the crap out of Drew McIntyre, basically make a statement because he's upset he lost the U.S. title. And then that's when Miz came down and cashed in the Money in the Bank, became world champion. And it was interesting with the Miz because he's such a low card guy, like legit low card guy at this point, that it was like they built Drew up so well that like it didn't seem like Drew was really going to lose the title, and same for Roman, of course, because they built him up so well, these two world champions. So it was like, even though like Drew's been in like a 30-minute match and beat the hell by Bobby Lashley, it's like, will Miz win this match? Like I didn't really think he was going to win necessarily the world title, even though, cashing in the Money in the Bank after that foregone conclusion that he should, because Miz is such like a low mid-card jobber type guy at this point. But he's been world champion before, and it's been about 10 years, and now he's a world champion again. And I liked it because that makes the world title a little more interesting for me, for even if it's temporary, And again, and maybe another match where they set up a Fastlane match between Drew McIntyre and Miz, and then Drew wins the title back, and then it's Drew and Bobby Lashley for the title.
There you go. You just took my point out of my mouth. Yeah, that's. I think this is more about setting up Lashley and Drew than it is more than Drew and Miz. I get the feeling they have this pay-per-view between now and Mania, so they kind of need to justify big matches. And Miz cashing in and winning, and then Drew eventually getting the title back, while also establishing that Drew and Lashley have a thing for the future. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. It's kind of cool that you get to set two angles at once with two different mainline opponents. Have they done Drew versus Sheamus yet? I'm someone that doesn't watch, WWE television. They seem
right. I believe they might have been on television, but yeah, again, like they were tag team together because I knew the results. They were tag team together, and they were like they've been friends forever or whatever, and they probably have been, legitimately. And then Sheamus turned on Drew at some point, and I'm not really sure how, but that happened. Now Sheamus is a bad guy. And so I feel like this was like the match that kind of put an asterisk into this Elimination Chamber. Like maybe they're going to do something with Drew and Sheamus here. Maybe Sheamus is going to win the title. Maybe, he's got the storyline reason why he might win it, and then Drew wins it back at Mania. But yeah, I don't think they're going to. They could go with Drew and Sheamus at Fastlane too, though. Like what they could do is do with Drew and Sheamus at Fastlane because they haven't had a pay-per-view match against each other. And they do have a rivalry going on. And then have Miz be world champion for a little while. I think maybe like Miz could be world champion because like you put him in the ring with anybody, even if it's Ricochet, who's like also a straight up jobber right now, unfortunately. Like he might lose the world title tonight, folks. And that makes it really interesting to me. Like just like Miz has been there, he's done that. He's been a marquee name. He has been. He's been a main eventer. He's got his own TV show, and maybe you just make him champion for a few months while Drew works out some feuds and then goes back to win the title in 2-3 months, maybe. I don't know. Like I was thinking, well, who could they make with Miz as a babyface challenging the world champion, hitting Miz as world champion at say WrestleMania? And I can't really think of the guy unless they just decide to put somebody that they haven't really given any momentum to up to this point. Or they could. This is really convoluted. They could know that Keith Lee's injuries aren't so bad, but it could still be a storyline. But Mike Johnson's pretty legit. And then they could set up Keith Lee winning the world title from Miz at WrestleMania, which I would love. That would be amazing to me. But I don't know. So they can go anywhere. If the longer Miz is world champion, the more possibilities. So
I think that's just wishful thinking on your behalf. I think Miz is just going to be an afterthought. He's just going to be a challenger for another pay-per-view. They're doing it with Fastlane. The plan is ultimately Drew versus Lashley at Mania. I think that's the way we're going. Your crafting of storylines is certainly not bad. Would I complain? No, but at the same time, I just from watching WWE, I don't think that's where they're going, but I could be wrong. And if you got what you wanted, it certainly wouldn't be the end of the world.
Right. So I try to make sure that whatever I creatively book, it's not the end of the world in the end. So, but yeah, Bobby Lashley, we will get for sure Bobby Lashley and Drew McIntyre. I mean, at WrestleMania, that's for sure. And they've been building Bobby Lashley up for a long time to be like in that spot, with a main event of WrestleMania or whatever. But yeah, they could go. I'll tell you one thing: if Drew McIntyre and Bobby Lashley are on, because it's a 2-day event, so they're on the same show as Miz, with whoever challenging him as world champion, Drew and Bobby Lashley go on last, or they're higher on the card. Miz is like a little lower on the card, so for sure. But even though he's world champ right now, but yeah. Anyway, overall thoughts about you said it was any last thoughts?
Any last thoughts? No, this is again, you brought up the showtime limit. I absolutely love this. This should be the thing going forward. I'm the big fan of the all killer, no filler. Nothing was overtly bad. Like nothing made me groan. Even Miz won with cashing Money in the Bank. It's like, okay, This is what they're doing. I'm not a giant fan, but at the same time, it's nothing really detrimental. Daniel Bryan winning the Chamber and then losing to Roman in a couple of minutes. That was also forgivable. Daniel's not as hot as he was earlier, so it's a little bit more forgivable. If they'd done this in year past, I'd be, outraged and been swearing I'd never watch WWE again. But no, this was a perfectly fine, acceptable, middle of the road. You said 6 out of 10. I say C-level pay-per-view. Just another pay-per-view on the WWE assembly line. Nothing really to, I mean, I believe me, I would love to go here today and just rip this pay-per-view a new one, but it's like, it's WWE, you kind of know what to expect, and with that said, it really wasn't all that bad, all things considered.
Yeah, look within their parameters, of like what they're capable of or what they are willing to be capable of, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
With all the horrible booking that they do on a weekly basis.
It certainly wasn't NXT, and it certainly wasn't AEW, so it's like, okay, it's mainline WWE, it's booked by Vince. You got a bunch of great workers going out there putting on good matches. Some questionable decisions, some questionable angles, some questionable directions, but for the most part, considering all the things that Vince has done lately, this is okay. This is serviceable.
Before we go, actually, I was just going to wrap us up, but before we go, wanted to know if you have any brief thoughts about NXT Evolve happening. It'll be a developmental company below NXT. Did you know about this?
This is news to me. I knew that they've been working with Evolve, but I know it was something now that they're, putting a ring on, and it's going to be this formal.
Well, basically, it's going to be a new show for them.
That's the thing. I know they've been working together. I know it's a show.
Right. So it's a new show. From what I understand, Gabe Sapolsky, of course, will be running it.
Nice.
And Jamie Borash is on board as well. He'll be working with Gabe. So those are two top names working there. And basically, it's going to be like, maybe what the thinking is that like NXT is now an equal brand to Raw and SmackDown. That's what they've been trying to do for the past couple of years. So basically, now they need like a farm fed. So basically, it's a farm fed of NXT. And so to me, I found it really interesting because it sounds like the furthest thing away from what Vince McMahon would actually watch or have anything to do with. And you have Gabe and Jeremy Borash who know what the hell they're doing. So it could actually be a really good show. But I'm excited about that. That news came out over the last week. So that's an interesting. I'm glad I could tell you about that, actually.
Well, again, I still follow wrestling, obviously. I've been watching AEW since we haven't been doing the show. But aside from that, maybe an occasional big New Japan pay-per-view. But other than that, I mean, I'll follow it here and there, maybe catch a bit of Raw or SmackDown as I'm getting ready to leave the house. But other than that, it's like I haven't been really following wrestling all that closely.
Right. I mean, it's just full disclosure. I've been watching wrestling for 26 years straight now. Past couple of years have been a little hard on me where I've been like, am I going to hate this? Because I used to watch every Raw and SmackDown.
Yeah, I used to watch a lot of fans. People not big fan of the no crowd. So you would be forgiving. You would be, you'd definitely be amongst the majority of fans. So.
Right. Yeah. It's basically like, as a fan, you don't have an obligation to watch everything. Yeah. You should watch what you would enjoy watching so you don't burn yourself the fuck out and never come back. Exactly. I used to watch every single show, and then it became like, well, I hate this now, so I need to take a step back. And, a couple years later, here we are. So, anyway, we'll wrap up because we had all those technical difficulties, and we're just lucky that the last 15 or 20 minutes have worked out pretty well. So.
I was joking with Dave earlier. And it's like last week's show where I had no power or very little power, and I was going off my phone's hotspot. That was better. And it's like, whoa. Yeah. I don't know what that says, but whoa.
Yeah, I think it's, just timing. I don't know. It worked out pretty well last week. And this week, so-so, but it was a great conversation. Next week, we'll be talking about the new NBC show, Young Rock.
Which, that's another instance. I didn't know that they existed, and then I finally watched the trailer. I'm like, this thing is awesome.
I liked it, but I have some thoughts on it, but we'll share them next week. I liked it so far. So, and we'll also be talking finally about Zack Snyder's Justice League.
You've been not on the show, but you've been teasing that since we started this thing, and I was like, I certainly don't blame you for punting it, But at the same time, it's like, okay, I'm fine talking about it, but at the same time, it's like, okay,
It's topical.
you're not hurting my feelings by not talking about it, Dave.
I feel like we're gonna have some fun with Zack Snyder next week, so I'll just say that. So tune in next week, and yeah, have a great week.
Bye.